I'm here with Shaun McCarthy, the Chair of the Commission for a Sustainable London 2012, and also with Andy Shipley, the Commissioner responsible for inclusive design, equality and diversity. With the 8th of September being International Paralympics Day and the London 2012 Paralympics tickets on sale on the 9th of September, today we'd like to look at the issue of accessibility. Shaun, if you could just begin by giving us an insight into how the Commission first started to look at the issue of accessibility.
Okay, we've seen accessibility as a fundamental sustainability issue from day one. The Commission's always been about social, economic and environmental sustainability, and the fact that it's everybody's games is very profound for us, so therefore we need to ensure accessibility for all abilities. In the very early days of the Commission, I took some advice from the then head of the Disability Rights Commission, Sir Bert Massey, who gave me some great advice and steer on accessibility, which is where we met Andy. And Andy Shipley joined us as a Commissioner, has made a fantastic contribution to advising us on real issues of accessibility for all Londoners for the Games.
And where would you say the greatest improvements have been made over the last few years in the lead up to next year's Games?
The inclusive design of the park and the venues has been a great success. I think it really is setting new standards of accessibility for people at sports venues and also in public places, so the ODA has done a fantastic job in that respect.
Are there any areas which you would highlight as being areas for improvement and development, particularly as we're coming up to just 12 months in advance?
I think there's one area where the jury is still out, and that's transport. Any improvements to the accessibility of London's transport system will be very welcome. Exactly how effective those improvements will be, we have still to tell as we run into the Games. I think the other area potentially that could cause us a problem is where venues are borrowed. So if you take for instance the tennis at Wimbledon and events that are taking place at Lord's and the ExCeL Centre, the more work that LOCOG has to do to actually create overlay temporarily to provide the accessibility standards for the Olympics, the less legacy we have at some of those venues, and I think that is an area of concern for us.
There's obviously been incredible progress made around venues, particularly in the design and construction phase. Shaun mentioned a couple of areas, transport but also the borrowed venues, where there may be some areas for concern, and it's certainly an area where the Commission is going to be looking quite closely over the next few months. Could you just expand on that?
Yeah, I think in terms of transport, if we see a legacy of an improved travel experience for disabled people after the Games, then we can deem two of them the level of success anyway for the Games in having improved transport accessibility within London. Certainly we're optimistic regarding pedestrian access on the South Bank, and the city operations have done a lot of work to improve access along the South Bank with the cooperation of the private landowners as well, and that's been a very welcome development in recent months. One area of concern is the borrowed venues and the quality of accessibility that we can achieve in the time we have left. From the earliest days of the Commission, we've been making a strong case for each of those venues to be fully audited and necessary steps taken to improve the accessibility on a permanent basis, because to rely on the temporary fix of Games overlay risks us not achieving the level of accessibility that's desirable. If we have to rely on the installation of temporary ramps and intermediate provision, then it's possible that some visitors may experience a lower quality of access to the venues, and I think that would be a particularly unfortunate outcome.
I think this obviously leads onto the topic of legacy, really, and thinking beyond the Games. What do you feel are the big issues that the OPLC needs to consider, certainly to make the Olympic Park more accessible for Londoners in the long term?
Yeah, I think there's two principal themes really in terms of an inclusive legacy vis-à-vis the developments of the London Park. One is sort of general accessibility across and around the park going forward, and the other is wider social inclusion, both to the park, but more importantly, I think, to the new communities that are being developed on the land around the park. And the early signs are good that OPLC is seriously considering how to ensure that those communities are fully inclusive and will be able to support a viable local economy, which will enable all of their residents really to access key services and facilities. So I think there's some sort of positive green shoots there in terms of the work that OPLC are doing. And I noticed just yesterday that an advertisement has been circulated for an Access and Inclusive Design Manager to be appointed by OPLC to take that work forward, and I think that's a very welcome step.
Andy, thank you very much, and thank you, Shaun.